Magdalene. Woman, no need to search any longer. The priestess of wealth. Woman, it is time to heal thyself.
Welcome, ladies. Today with us we have Lyna from actually France, but she lives in Salt Lake City, if I'm correct, Utah, Salt Lake City. And we're going to talk about Mary Magdalene. And what we're going to talk about is her experience about Mary Magdalene, where and how she found in her life Mary Magdalene and how it changed her life. Because from when I talked to her, it was a lot of things that she told me that I think she's ready to share, and also about her new book coming out, and also what Mary Magdalene did in her life for her. So Lyna, welcome. Kathy, welcome also. And we're ready for you. We're ready for you to open up your heart and tell us and share with us actually about Mary Magdalene. So where you want to begin, Lyna?
Thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me to participate in this wondrous and wonderful conference. I'm really humbled and touched. You mentioned opening the heart. And for me, Mary Magdalene has been first and foremost a companion in healing my heart, my wounded and traumatized heart. And that's really where I would like to begin, by sharing how my journey with the Magdalene has helped me transform my own trauma and the blocks that ultimately were disconnecting me from my light, from my higher self, from my soul, to renew a holy relationship with all the aspects of myself that had been fragmented and that kept me connected to emotional and relational codependency, to low self-esteem, to a lack of personal autonomy, to giving others' opinion a greater weight, and also from my true path, from my vocation, and from my own center. One of the most important principles that I learned from the Magdalene is the principle of balance, embodied and incarnated by Ma'at, the ancient Egyptian goddess, and how important it is to always come back to that equilibrium. So perhaps I should start with how I met the Magdalene and where my journey with her began.
Yeah, also I'd like you to talk a little bit about the connection with Bas, because that's a very interesting connection. A lot of us connected with Isis also, but that's a very interesting connection.
With Ma'at?
Yeah, with your art. Yeah.
Ma'at, yes. So it was almost 7 years ago, since I was perhaps 5 years old, I was always on the Jesus path. I've believed in God and Jesus since I was about 6 years old. And my spiritual journey has gone through many houses, many religions, many empire religions. And when I was about 32, I came across A Course in Miracles, which is a metaphysical psycho-spiritual text that quite literally also changed my life.
That's a very big one in America. That's a very big one in America.
Yes.
Gone through the Course of Miracles, yes.
I had just left formal religion and I needed a spiritual path. And, it was my path at the time. And about almost 7 years ago, I actually was helping a friend with her spiritual tours in Hawaii. And she has a beautiful sanctuary. And she also is a student and a teacher and an artist of intentional creativity. And she had a magnificent painting of Mary Magdalene. Now, until then, I knew who Mary Magdalene was from the Bible, but that was about it. She was never a figure that I connected to. But that day, when I stood in my friend's sanctuary in front of that painting, my friend Carol said, "Oh, the Magdalene is here for you." And I thought, oh, okay, that's nice, whatever that means. From that day on, there was a magnetic pull. Oh, I'm getting chills right now. That compelled me to research the Magdalene and to research everything I knew about her. Now that summer, I went to France, and of course, I wanted to go to Saint-Baume, as I came across information that suggested that the Magdalene had lived in the south of France, and I'm originally from France. I'm from Normandy, and I've lived in the US for 20 years now. But that summer of 2015, I knew that the timing was not quite right for me to go visit the presence of the Magdalene in Provence in the south of France. 5 months later, my ex-husband announced that he was moving to Hong Kong. We had been divorced for 5 years at that point, and we were sharing custody. His move to Hong Kong for a professional opportunity that he could not refuse meant that I was going to be a truly single mom. And I kept resisting it. I was angry. I felt abandoned. It was triggering some of my own childhood trauma of abandonment. And one night I was praying and I thought, I surrender. God, this is in your hands. And then I heard a little voice. It was 4 a.m. that told me, what if you move to France? At the time I was working for Barney's New York and Chanel. I had a very fast-paced career. I was commuting into New York City every single day. And I just knew it was time for me to move back home, which would allow my 2 young daughters to get to know their heritage, my language. And it was time for me to come home. And I didn't know I was going to move to Provence, but I kept seeing signs. I would see the fleur de lis like 10 times a day. And I thought, okay. Now, as a student of Carl Jung, I believe that images and signs hold meaning if we choose to pause and listen to what the cosmos has to say to us through those symbols, those images. And the fleur de lis is the symbol of Saint-Maximin-la-Sainte-Baume, which is the town where the relics of Mary Magdalene are. And I knew. So 6 months later, my 2 daughters and I gave up everything in my apartment in New York City. I quit my job. And we moved to a little village in the south of France where I would study Mary Magdalene full time and start my true healing journey.
Amazing.
I want to pause if you have comments or questions so far.
Well, for me, I've been to both places, Saint-Baume and the south of France. I've been going there since 2011 and kind of been following Magdalene for such a long time. But even before that, because I was born a Greek Orthodox, correct? And Magdalene for us, it was the old tradition, as everybody say, that she's not, whatever the books used to say in the Catholic tradition and the Greek tradition, but I never believed in it. I never believed she was that. I believed she was something more and much bigger. And Jesus has always been next to me. So I understand how do you feel and how she brings us all together to really wake us up, to really understand our feminine and our femininity through all this process. So yes, go on. I can't wait. I want to hear more.
Well, I think it was incredibly brave of you to make that decision. And I think that one of the things that this, whole series is talking about is really trusting that intuition, that feminine divine energy, that inner knowing, and to have that real commitment to it, because you were giving up a lot, right? And making a huge life change because you heard a call. And that I think is a really interesting journey to have that courage to listen and commit yourself in that way. And I think it's a great model for all of us because we hear that call, but we don't always act on the call. And the fact that you did in such a big, powerful way is really quite impressive.
Thank you, Kathy, for saying that. It was scary, and there were times in that period when I thought, oh, what am I doing? I'm moving 2 young girls to another country. They don't speak the language. However, I knew there was a deep part of me, now through A Course in Miracles, which taught me to connect to my intuition, to my internal guidance, and to trust it. Through our experiences in the past, that built a bridge, because as we begin to hear the call and as we heed to the call, there are miracles, there are sets of circumstances that line up to support you in the material world that are genuine. It doesn't mean it's not scary, it doesn't mean it's not challenging, but everything showed up at the right time. The house, everything lined up for me. But it was scary indeed, but my devotion that was already bursting through my heart for her, that sudden love, that fire, I trusted. And as things started showing up that I needed, I'm like, oh, this is my path, that's the right path. So we arrived in the little village, and I was about 45 minutes from the grotto of Saint-Baume. So for those who may not know, there are two main sites associated with Mary Magdalene in Provence. There is the grotto of Saint-Baume, which is a grotto, a cave that's literally in the middle of a mountain, which is where she's alleged to have lived, to have spent the last 30 years of her life for some significant amount of time. And at about 20, 30 minutes from that, there's Saint-Maximin la Sainte-Baume, where her relics were found in December of 1279, with several sarcophagi, with Saint Maximus, who was one of the 70s in the Bible, Saint Sidonie, who is the blind man in the Bible, Martha as well. And there's a beautiful, magnificent basilica with a crypt. And when you go into that crypt in the basilica, you behold what is alleged to be her skull. I have felt her presence there countless times. And so I would go there. So once a week, once or twice a week, I would drive to either the grotto, Saint-Maximin, or both. And I would write. At that time, I also had gotten a publishing contract for my first book of prayers. So I would spend the day in the sacred forest of Saint-Baume, where her presence is soaked in the earth, in the trees, in the leaves, in the soil. Is so potent. So what would happen once a week, I would drop off my daughters at their school, and then I would drive to the grotto. And apart from writing, now, let me back up a little bit. One of my first times there. Now, at that time, for me, spirituality was synonymous with reaching higher realms, right? It was turned outwards. I thought that being spiritual meant living in upper realms, in other realms of the ether, right? It was very focused towards the sky. And I remember walking to the basilica. It was one Saturday afternoon, and something stopped me. And something told me, there was my internal voice, my inner guide, that said, spirituality is not about attaining, the 20th realms. This right now, this journey for you is about returning into your body and healing the blocks within yourself. And I thought, whoa, what does that even mean? And what I did every time I would go to that grotto is I would go on an inner journey within myself, went into my shadow, which, if you think about it, the grotto is such a perfect metaphor for our inner cave, so that I would begin to pull out all of the traumatic events of my childhood. Now, for the first 18 years, I experienced drastic, adverse childhood experiences, such as abandonment, physical, emotional maltreatment, or abuse. I never knew my father. My mom was a victim of mental illness and substance addiction. So she abandoned me many times. Then I was placed in abusive foster families, and abuse kept on going, although it took on many forms. So my heart had been crushed. My body was holding pockets of defense mechanisms. And what is very, very important, what I learned, is that there is very little access to the soul if our psyche or inner world is prisoner to our trauma. Because our ego, if we've experienced trauma, which quite frankly, who has not, right? Even if it might not be significant, But then our ego is so busy, our consciousness is so busy with defensive and protective mechanisms that our higher self, or self with a capital S, or the template of the perfect human being that Mary Magdalene mentions in her gospel, if you call it the higher self or the soul, that is hidden and it's locked almost behind those protective and defensive mechanisms, which means it surrounds our heart. It creates a fog around the soul, making us prisoner of our trauma instead of co-creator with our light in our soul, being connected to that divine spark of God that is in every single one of us. So for me, the transformation meant taking my sins of abandonment when my mom would drag me into a bar and abandon me when I was 6 years old, and healing that with the Magdalene, because inner work can be very, very scary. That means reopening an entire world of dark, painful, frightening, lonely emotions. Shadow work is not for the faint of heart. Carl Jung said that unless, I'm going to paraphrase, unless one walks through the darkness or inner hell, will not be able to bring forth our light.
Exactly.
And by metaphorically and physically going to the cave of Mary Magdalene every single week, I was able to bring that darkness, my shadow, into the light. Not only to bring it to awareness, but to also have the unconditional love of the Magdalene envelop me. And that in of itself was one of the biggest gifts of my life.
And it's true, because that cave does have that energy, that grotto has that place of really a transformation. It's not about the spiritual bypass that we do now in our lives. Like, you know, we think, oh yeah, everything is love and light. No, the inner work, the shadow work I'm talking about, and I'm getting chills, is to get into that, you know, cave within ourselves and really, really clean all that out. And that's also brave, because you never know what's going to come out. You never know what you need to face. I mean, it's very scary to face yourself, truly face yourself, and simultaneously your ancestors, correct? Because you're not facing just you. You're facing what came before you, or the way you came through. So it's like going and forgiving all this. So, and really understanding it and feeling your trauma and going, okay, I'm here to change that. I'm here to let go of all that trauma, instead of me spiritually bypassing and going, oh, I'm happy, I'm love and light. That doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. And I mean, people think it works, but it doesn't. It's just work on, you know, you just work on nothing, actually. I mean, I don't want to be that straightforward, but that's the truth. When you do spiritual bypass, you do no work, correct?
Right.
Yes.
I had a question. So I know you talked about how being enveloped in this unconditional love of Mary Magdalene, like, really created that space for you. What else is about the Magdalene in particular is the sort of catalyst for this? Because it really sounds like this was a real catalyst to be able to even begin this type of deep work that Zephy and you were talking about, where it's not just sort of the surface work, but it's the real work that we aren't always all able to do.
So for me, what the catalyst was really being able to restore harmony within myself, so that, you know, I could be plugged into my soul, so that my heart could be purified enough to host divine love. And unless I did not, it's an ongoing journey, right? There are layers.
No, I love what you're saying.
Right? It's like layers of trauma, of bifurcation, of detours from the soul, right? But unless I cleaned up my psyche from this life, and also from my ancestors, which I will get to, Zephy, I'm so happy that you brought that up, because I think it is a significant part about healing of feminine principle.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And also, as you mentioned, yes, there's spiritual bypass. If we bypass now, the first years of my spiritual awakening, I did not want to look at my trauma because it meant a cognitive dissonance where I had two sets of identities. I was that new awakened, I was spiritual, it was right, that identity. But then underneath that, bursting at the seam of my spiritual identity was all my trauma and my fear of the masculine and my fear, of men and my unconscious fear of men and of abandonment. And I didn't know how to connect to my emotions. So when my really challenging emotions, when my complexes, my psychological complexes would take over me, my ego, would be run over by my trauma. And I don't know how to reconnect to myself because I did not have the harmony, the equilibrium, and true authentic self-connection. I didn't know how to self-soothe because my emotions would just take over, right? So those defensive mechanisms would take over my ego, my body, my breathing, my heart, my thoughts. And then, I would just be so disconnected. So that was really, that's where it started. That was the catalyst, the principle of harmony and purification, in a sense, to just remove what is not truly ours, what's not ours to carry, right? Because at the end of the day, trauma was never our fault, right? Trauma occurs when there's an experience from the outside that our psyche cannot integrate, but it's not our fault, right? So we take on those experiences, the traumatic emotions, and we keep carrying them. It's like carrying a bag behind us on our shoulder, and it cripples our soul. So for me, the Magdalene was all about, balance, equilibrium, being able to connect to the higher heart, so that when we are in the world, we are that light. We are the light, and we can actually let our divine spark show through without having that trauma stop us, or those false personas, those false identities, so that we can individuate, self-realize, and become who we truly are.
I love that.
Yes, it does, make sense that the higher heart is part of her connection, because that's one of her symbols anyway. It's the beautiful heart that, that we have to really understand what our heart is about, because the heart has to have the forgiveness. And also, if we don't have the forgiveness, there's no way we can have the unconditional love. But forgiving ourselves for the choices, and also forgiving our ancestors for the choices that we made through them, and, they made through us, and all that. It's a long story for us to go into, but but yeah, I think it's really amazing the strength that you had to actually dive that deep, and coming from a world that I definitely understand, which is the fashion industry. And I understand the world really well because I was there, and we'll talk about it another day, because that world just kind of holds us a lot back, because it's about the 3D world. There's no love, no compassion, no understanding of who we are there. We just go body image, or, we have to be this way, or we have to be that way, in that world. And I feel you. I feel you very much so, because I had a similar experience being in the fashion industry. So that really shifted your life. That really, the Mary Magdalene, and finding that compassion in the heart, and going through a marriage and having 2 children, and how are you going to bring those 2 children up, because they both are daughters also. That is such a beautiful thing that you were gifted with, not to allow the daughters to go what you went through, and to stop the karma and that energy right there. So you can, I'm just talking about this and getting chills. So you can go where you are today, sharing this with us. It's really amazing transformation. Thank you. That's amazing transformation. Yeah. Kathy, do you have anything to share or ask?
Well, sure. So you were you said you went there, you studied full time, you're writing this book. What were some of the biggest revelations that you had in sort of dedicating yourself to the Magdalene energy? Because, Mary Magdalene has many faces, right? And there's a lot of filtered through sort of patriarchal lens about who she is. And then there's sort of this discovery of who she really is. And as you were on this journey, kind of what were some of the things that really revealed themselves to you about
her spiritual authority? She was a masteress of spiritual transformation, and she really taught me how to embody that transformation, because I think it's one thing to keep it at an intellectual level, which is what the early church did, right? There was the Peter authority, the Peter lineage, apostolic succession, which was about all the outer mysteries, the external mysteries. She taught the inner mysteries, which is inner work, transforming, healing the heart, so that the teachings of Yeshua can be embodied and transform oneself from the inside out. She taught me discernment. Now, when I say she taught me, those are the impressions I have. I do not claim that Mary Magdalene, the figure, was with me. She might have been. Regardless, the effect was as if she was right there with me.
Right.
I think that there are two concepts that can get enmeshed and mixed up sometimes. There's the Magdalene archetype, which is the female Christic figure. For the past 2,000 years, it was always about Jesus, as it should be. He was the love of her life. And again, that's something that we tend to forget. She gave up everything in her life to follow him for at least 3 years. That's how much we know. Imagine today, leaving everything behind to follow your spiritual teacher. And then after that, after his death, she kept on teaching. We know in Pistis Sophia, out of the 115 questions, for example, she asked 67. He said that she's the one who understands it all.
Exactly.
So her spiritual authority and leadership was something that I would, and I'm still learning. There's still a new path that's opening in front of me, a new impression. So when I said she taught me, was archetype, her energy, her essence. And she also taught me to not give away my own spiritual authority, that what I was hearing and receiving from within my heart was valid, and that was my inner path to my soul.
So I feel what you're saying, actually, and it makes a lot of sense for me. It's that she's telling us that we all are individuals. So whatever we hear in our heart, it can be actually our own truth. Kind of following our own truth, because it's inside, it's deep in us, because we have it as a memory. And of course, she is us in the sense that we have many aspects, correct? So she's one of our aspects, the Mary Magdalene that we know. And even if she was, be called the, whatever she was called, I don't even want to say that name anymore because it's done for me, and she was called like that in the ancient text, in the Greek Catholic, whatever church they called her whatever names, and then they change her, down the line. We discovered the truth, and we had discovered even that aspect of her is inside of us. So everything is inside of us. So she's a whole figure for me that I look up to her. None of us can claim her. And to me, that is very important. Now, we know, you know what I'm saying? None of us can claim her because we are it, if that makes sense what I'm saying. So I know from what you're saying, that's what I feel that you're saying. That's what is coming very strong for me.
But I also feel, thank you, because I feel that she works differently to every single person. I think she enters different doors, which oftentimes, what we've seen recently, she will enter through the door of the wounded feminine, right? You know, there's a lot of association between her and the divine feminine. So I think oftentimes for a lot of women, she will come through that door.
Yeah.
What it means is highly individualistic. She represents wholeness, right? An anthropos, a complete human being, fully divine, fully mortal. I also believe, you know, the anthropos also means, you know, the marriage, the union of the masculine and the feminine within oneself. Yeah. And again, if we do not transform our psychic, psycho-emotional blockages around the masculine and around the feminine, we will most likely experience the negative aspects of both those principles that exist within every single one of us.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I really hear that there's this sense of like, and I love that like a catalyst was like harmony. Yeah. And kind of finding that balance and again, that masculine, that feminine, listening to ourselves and facing our shadows, and like, what a powerful journey that was. And I really thank you for sharing it, because it inspires, you know, it really inspires people to think about that for themselves and to think about what that means to go on that level of a journey to yourself. And that Magdalene energy is this beautiful encasement and path and support as, you know, you travel it. And so it's just beautiful to hear all of that. I know you're writing a book. We'd love to hear about that as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I wrote a book of prayers and active imagination exercises. Active imagination is an integral part of my inner work, of my psychic and spiritual inner work. I believe that imagination is, what's the word I'm looking for? Underestimated tool to heal, you know, our soul, to heal our heart, to heal our psyche. And, you know, it's really helped me transform a lot of energy within myself. It can also present it as an energy worker that you can use, you know, with, you know, your inner children, inner child. You know, the inner child oftentimes is the entity within ourselves that still hurts, that gets triggered when an external event, you know, reminds us of something in our childhood. And then again, those defense mechanisms come through instead of letting the heart see the other as, you know, as whole, or through the eyes of divine love, through the eyes of forgiveness. You know, oftentimes it is the lens of trauma that will present itself in front of our inner eyes.
Right.
So I can, I mean, I do have a link to my book. You know, it's not, honestly, I'm not good at promoting it. But, you know, I did write it there. You know, I wrote it from Provence, and it's based on 52 different themes. So you'll have like a prayer and an exercise to connect to divine feminine, like around motherhood, around self-esteem, around finding your spiritual path, around finding your vocation, around releasing, you know, previous partner, around self-image, just very practical prayers to reorganize thoughts, and then active imagination, meditation exercises to shift your energy around it.
Well, that sounds wonderful. I look forward to reading it. And I love it because you sort of share your journey through these prayers and exercises that then we get to benefit from what you experience. So sorry, go ahead, Safi.
No, I was just going to say, actually, the first two, they're going to sign up, you know, on your side. They're going to get the book actually signed and delivered to them, the whole book. And the rest of them will get a PDF, that's going to be fun. But are also, I mean, that's the free gift that we get, that Lyna is giving. But I want you to talk a little bit about the second book that you're preparing that is coming. I mean, it's not all there yet. And the work that you've been doing about putting all the facts of Mary Magdalene. If you can just give us a couple words about that, not a lot, because I know it's in the beginning of the process.
Yeah, right now that project is on pause. I don't know if I'm going to be taking it up or not. Here's my honest view on it. I think that there is so much confusion out there, and I do not wish to to the confusion around the Magdalene. You know, my work really has been around kind of reestablishing who she truly was, apart from all the projections, because I feel there are so many projections, which we need. We need projection in order to see what we see is lacking. So for example, we're going to project onto the Magdalene wholeness, the feminine Christ, the enlightened feminine, the transformed feminine. And the reason why we oftentimes project it onto an outer figure is because we unconsciously believe we lack that characteristic, we lack that trait. So oftentimes the only way to see what we believe is lacking is by analyzing our projection and seeing it on someone else. I'm going to share a story. For example, I remember the very first time I saw Marianne Williamson on the stage. Now, she used to be my idol right around 2012, 2013, when I first started with Dulce Miracles. And I remember seeing her on stage. I went to a conference in San Francisco. She showed up and I started crying. And what I admired so much about her now with hindsight, looking back, was that she seemed so spiritually plugged in and connected to God, to spirit. And at the time, I didn't think I had that ability. I was still basing my spiritual connection to external experiences, to people, to a third party, right? But now, when I look back, I'm like, oh, at the time, I didn't believe I had that spiritual connection, that connection between me and spirit directly. And that's what I admired in Marianne Williamson. And then once I kind of took that projection back, it was, oh no, that is something in me as well. So I think that taking back a projection will also reignite, you know, our light and all those wonderful attributes we believe only belong to others. And again, it's part of returning to our wholeness, right? Rebuilding our wholeness, retrieving our wholeness within ourselves. And for me, that's what the Magdalene has shown me. She was like a mirror as well. She was a mirror in my heart to show me not only my shadows, but only show me the attributes of my soul that are so unique to me in this lifetime, that was stolen from me by people who abused me, right? Because then I identified with them. I would identify with the projections onto me. And she helped me recover myself.
Well, that's the book you need to write.
I guess I know. That's all right. I just went on the tangent. Yes, that's what I have to say.
The one is on hold, and you know, because of what you're saying, and I understand, because there's so much out there going on. That's the one you need to write again, because I'm going to look forward to the new one. You know, because of what you're saying and how much I know you, I'm very excited to hear that also. So, I just want to say thank you so much. It's been such an amazing connection, and I'm glad and I feel honored and extremely honored to share you with all the women and the Women Arising of our summit, because it's just, you know, when I kind of felt you, I said, she's the one I really need to talk to, you know, she's the one I need to bring on. So I really want to thank you so much, Lyna. I really appreciate your zest and your strength, and you truly honest, speaking your truth from your heart. And yes, that is the Mary Magdalene in all of us. And thank you for really making it so powerful and so, I don't know, amazing. I just keep running. I don't know what else to say. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I feel like you did speak just some beautiful truth today on deep personal level. And it's like, and it's funny that you bring up Marianne Williamson, because she has that quote about when you liberate yourself, you liberate others, you know, and you shine your light, you let others shine your light. And I feel like that is a path that you've modeled for us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lyna. Thank you so much.
Thank you.